見事な蹴り、田中の蹴り。
さすがにやっぱり田中はベテランですね。わずかな時間切れのほんのちょっとした隙をマークポイントしました。やっぱりこれはさすがにやっぱりベテランだと思います。
田中の逆襲ですね。
逆襲です。鮮やかでした。
これで田中選手、世界選手権見事2連勝です。そして日本は6種目全部の優勝を成し遂げました。これで世界選手権
You've just become the world champion for the second straight time. How do you feel? All I can say is I feel really happy. Mainly because all the competitors I fought against were all really big. In the first round, I fought against Bruno. He came in second, and I've been wanting to beat him for a long time. Anyway, once I defeated him in the first round, that set the pace for the rest of the tournament.
一応1回戦で倒したということで、それから少し調子に乗ってきました。
It's early September, and the All Japan Karate Championships are close at hand. At the main dojo of the Japan Karate Association, those of the instructors class intending to participate in the meet have gathered here, time and strength permitting, from all parts of Japan. In order to put the last finishing touches on their ever-continuous tests, they're devoting themselves to daily training sessions. I've known Tanaka Sensei since I started university. I met him first when I entered the karate club of the Veterinary Medicine School of Nihon University. Once a week he'd come to teach us, and that's how I got to know him. It was in my very first year of university. My very first impression of him was one of a fearfulness that's impossible to put into words. It wasn't in the way he spoke or in his expression, but instead was a fearfulness that came forth from within his whole being, even from far away. Just strong, really strong, an incredible strength no matter what. I could never outdo him. Even today I can't outdo him. His technique? Tanaka's kick is his best technique. Concentrating on that kick itself, I intend to learn more from Tanaka's techniques in many ways. Masahiko Tanaka will not be taking part as a competitor in this meet, but the zeal with which he follows the kumite is still one which exceeds that of the younger competitors. There's a grimness that only a former continuous world champion can hold, because, as head of the foreign instructors, he has pushed himself to the limits, and even now continues to do so. The 23rd and 24th of September. At long last, the All Japan Karate Championships are before us. Now is the time for the results of a year's training to be put to the test. Kumite and waza matches, both individual and group, are to take place at the championships. Masahiko Tanaka, in his role as referee, watches closely the development of the young men and women aiming to make their mark in the world. In kumite matches, the Sundame rule is held, but shattering forces are brought to such extremes that injuries occur one after the other. There's a fierceness that will not allow for presupposition even for one moment, as bodies that have been forged into weapons meet in an exchange of well-trained waza. I'd read about him in magazines, and a lot of my seniors trained at JKA, so I'd heard a lot about him from them as well. And the first time I met him was when I graduated from Takushoku University. That year, we'd had quite a few victories, and I met him at a celebration party.
Tanaka Sensei 来られていただきまして、その時初めてお会いしたのが初めて。
When you face Tanaka Sensei in a match, you find that every opportunity for an attack is blocked. It gives you the feeling that there are no unguarded moments at all. He's quite open and frank. Seems very down to earth. As for his matches, well, the one that left the strongest impression on me is the World Championships in Bremen. In the finals, in the last decisive moments of the match, he used a front kick to the midsection, his finest technique. It's pretty hard to put your best technique to use during the tense atmosphere of a major tournament, but he doesn't let himself be bothered by that atmosphere. What's more, he took advantage of a rare opportunity in that 2-minute match, and at precisely that moment was able to apply his best technique. I was astonished by it. His karate's strong. He's got strikes and kicks that are powerful enough to knock down anyone with a single blow. I'd like to have just a fraction of the strength that he's got. The fifth individual Kumite match is over. And at last, the best 4 are left undefeated. Drawing to the conclusion of the championships, only the final 3 matches, the semi-finals, remain. The final match will have these two pitted against each other. The up-and-coming Tomio Imamura and Hideo Yamamoto, who, because of the explosive power his small stature contains, is known as the pocket atom. In 1973, by winning the championship at the International Karate Championships in Kyushu, a major turning point took place in Masahiko Tanaka's karate career. You're the strongest there is now. Do you understand just what that means? With these words, his seniors advised him. He made the decision to quit his job and devote himself to winning in karate. His aim was for sure and certain victory. With this turning point, he left the days of wildly rushing, extravagant matches behind him. In the last part of the match, by thoroughly reading the opponent's movements, it's possible, in the last 30 seconds, to summon up total concentration of spirit in order to find that unguarded moment and complete the perfect waza. The amount of power is far too great to let loose in a match. Holding back the too dangerous roundhouse kick to the face, a powerful roundhouse kick to the midsection is let loose. Accumulated together is the experience acquired from countless actual bouts as well as effort unseen by others, into this unshowy, not too easy to determine waza. A waza so deadly that it's become his strongest forte. In 1974, he gained his first victory in the 17th All Japan Karate Championships. And since then, by winning these championships 3 times in a row, as well as the World Karate Championships twice, he reaches heights no man has ever reached before. Let's hear some explanations of the basis of the deadly waza that has shaken the world. First, from the great master Masatoshi Nakayama. The skillfulness of his combination of kicks and blows brings him victory in countless competitions. Because it's a technique with profound psychological effect on the opponent, it's one reason why his opponent fears him. In particular, when it comes to foreign karateka, an attack from below is very threatening. If not enough force is put into the kick, with the aid of their build, they can brazenly attack from above. A quick kick and blow combination renders useless the unnecessary force expelled by the opponent. When he uses his kick waza, an extremely important point is the firm tenseness of the ankles on both the kicking leg and the supporting leg. If the kicking leg ankle is not tensed firmly, the effect of the kick will be lost. In order to give a powerful kick with the hips thrust strongly forward, the supporting leg must be firmly pressing the floor and a strong snap applied with the ankle. The way Masahiko Tanaka uses his ankles is truly wonderful. One of Masahiko Tanaka's strongest waza is the front kick waza from a position with the feet firmly planted on the floor. In the second World Karate Championships, he was able to gain a beautiful victory using this waza when he fought against Yugoslavia's talented Yorga. One of the key points is the way he changes step at the same time the hips are shifted, or, in other words, the shifting of the hips leading to a change in step. Another key point is that even if the front leg is withdrawn, without shifting the hips, the knee is raised high, and the kicking snap is applied firmly. By withdrawing the front leg, the opponent's attacking ma'ai is thrown off. And by shifting the hips, go no sen is possible. A blow brought around immediately after the kick dismantles the opponent's offense. Put another way, it becomes possible to make a strike at a deadly angle. This technique is particularly effective during those parts of the bout which occur close to the edge of the mat. Masahiko Tanaka's strongest waza is this Mai Kazami Geri with the front leg. In the individual Kumite finals at the Second World Karate Championships, this waza was used to determine his victory over the veteran from West Germany. One important point about this waza is that when kicking, the hips are not pulled in, or in other words, it is important that one's height does not change when one is driving in the kick towards the opponent. Therefore, it is necessary to bring the knee up high and close to the chest. If the knee is not brought up high enough, the essential snap to the kick is lost. The kick becomes weak, and its line of attack is poorly made. This technique is not visibly large. Therefore, at the moment of the kick's impact, it is essential that the hips are also thrust forward. To increase the strength of the kick and gain a point, this is necessary. Next, let's get an explanation of the waza from Masahiko Tanaka himself by watching a training session. This is Imamura, who won second place in the last championship. Now, what he must do is, with an attack from a low position as his purpose, practice in finding that brief, unguarded moment which occurs when the opponent is changing position. Keep in mind that there is always at least one time in each match when your opponent will change position. Do not let that opportunity go by. In Masahiko Tanaka's case, he always plants a kick. Now, let's look closely at one aspect of this deadly waza, Masahiko Tanaka's strongest forte. This is the front leg roundhouse kick achieved while constantly changing position. Before your opponent has even finished his kick, the movements in preparation for your kick must be completed. He makes the most of his natural resiliency and the techniques brought about by countless well-thought-out devices and diligent efforts. Even today, his talents never seem to weaken. What sort of a man is this, who, as an active karateka or as an international instructor, has literally devoted himself, body and soul, to karate? Let's hear what those who've known him from his brown belt days, his major opponent Ida, and the chief instructors at JKA's main branch have to say about Masahiko Tanaka, the karateka.
Tanaka
Senpai's first victory was in July 1973 at the World Karate Championships held in honor of the 50th anniversary of Funakoshi Sensei in Kyushu. Tanaka was 31 or 32 at the time, I think.
初優勝だと思うんです。ですから年にすると31の時だと思います。またその時決勝戦が僕と
I fought against him in the finals, so I remember it very well. I remember that the match was extended, then extended again, and I was defeated in a sudden draw.
負けたんですが、あの後その試合の後ですね。
Even to this day, I can recall everything. With a slight tear in his eye, Tanaka Senpai said to me, "Ida, it's my first win, you know." I can still remember him saying that. Every match must be won, he'd say. And true to those words, he was never defeated. He became the world champion twice in a row, kept on winning, and was still active when he retired. After his first victory at Kyushu, I fought against him for 3 consecutive years, and 3 times I was defeated. Of those, 2 were final matches, and each time I lost at a critical moment. We've both won against each other during that period when our standings were not so high, but when it came to the major events, I knew that I was no match against the results of his diligent training. Tanaka Senpai possesses that all-important spring in his movements. What's more, he absolutely hates the thought of losing. Naturally, in karate, no one likes the thought of losing, but his is an incredibly strong willpower. Which is why, from the way he carries himself in matches and the way he trains himself, you can see that rather than from the aspect of physical skill, He's fighting with his whole mental being. There are cases when I fight against someone and am held back by a skillful series of rapid kicks and strikes, which are a result of extensive training and techniques. Yet, I don't feel I'm being fought mentally. But when I practice with Tanaka Senpai or fight against him in a match, I can feel the large amount of mental pressure he uses against his opponent. You could say he is challenging you with his spirit. Before he even uses his techniques, he begins the match with his spiritual strength. This mental pressure is unbelievably powerful. Something from within him keeps you back, pushing, pushing. Just like a frog becomes mesmerized by a snake. And just when you've been driven into a mental corner, the kicks and blows start coming at you, and you know you're in for it. You feel this very strongly when you fight against him. If you were to make a comment about him, one word you'd probably have to use is fearful. And also, you'd have to say just how strong he is in a fight. He never gives in. It's a confidence that comes from the amount of time he puts into training himself. More time than anyone else. At the World Championships in Bremen, with a mere 2 seconds remaining, he was able to score a point that reversed the match. And during their finals at the World Championships in Tokyo, he lost a point to his opponent, but in the last 10 seconds was able to even it up and won in the extended time. He just never gives up. Until the very last moment, he's confident that he'll win. He's the kind of karateka that has confidence that's both mental and physical. As head of the international division, Masahiko Tanaka is an instructor in foreign countries. His activities have taken him to all corners of the earth, to Europe, America, the Caribbean, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. The responsibilities that go with this job are enormous, for there is a heavy obligation to the karate of the future. Now let's hear from the foreign karateka and other instructors about their impressions of Masahiko Tanaka as an instructor.
Tanaka Sensei has been very instrumental in helping foreigners when they come to Japan, if their main purpose involves the study of karate. I believe that he thinks that by helping raise the level of technique in foreign countries, he will therefore give more challenge to the Japanese to improve themselves. Within the dojo training, yes, I have, and it's a very unique experience.
I think we've learned the Buddha way from Tanaka Sensei. He always reminds me of a man that should have lived maybe 100 years ago. He has that samurai spirit and attitude to life. And I think this is rubbed off on a lot of the Westerners who believe in this sort of idea.
That, I think, is a thing that cannot be described in words. I have learned, he makes me enthusiastic. He sets an example for me, and I like what he does. And he's put enthusiasm into me. And I believe that the word enthusiastic is an important word. I would like to actually expand on that. Enthusiastic comes from the word en theos, means in God. So in other words, his spirit is like a godly spirit. In other words, he's imparting that, and there's nothing better than you can give a person than enthusiasm. Because that encourages humanity, that builds the whole of our society. Anything opposite to enthusiasm, like the word like indifference, collapsing and all that kind of thing, is the opposite. That is destruction. Any negativities in life, enthusiasm, if a teacher can bring that, he's going to build a big association and contribute. I believe he has got that quality. That's what he's given to me.
我々がやっているIAKFっていうグループ、世界的なグループがあるんですが。
We're running the International Association IAKF and held our first competition in Los Angeles. I was a director at the time. Naturally, Tanaka became champion then. But at that time, there was no one with a very high degree of skill from among the karateka of other countries. So you could say that the Japanese competitors did just as they wanted in matches that seemed to be carried on according to the prescribed embu form. Anyway, it resulted in an easy victory for the Japanese. This definitely was not the case, however, at the second World Championships held at the Budokan in Tokyo. This time, the international competitors came well prepared, and the tournament was quite a challenge, especially in the finals, where it was a seesaw match all the way, with points being scored and then lost, and scored, lost over and over again, in a fight that had the competitors pushing themselves as far as humans can possibly go. Well, that was my impression that day. I think that in times like that, during a match, that's where the results of your daily training and seriousness with which you approach a fight are shown. You often hear of the established formula, spirit, technique, and the body. Putting this formula into full play is where the amount of training you've done and the way you've trained become also important. Also important, I think, is the way you demonstrate how that precept that's been mastered mentally, and this is something that Tanaka accomplished. Naturally, we and all who were watching at the Budokan that day were deeply impressed. And now, here he is in his mid-40s, and he can still move that way. He still has those movements. He's someone who's surpassed the limits usually set down by age. And from among those practicing karate in Japan, there is no one else that I know of that can do this. It's something that I'd like every young person to learn from. He's trained himself with diligence, repetitive training that's extremely valuable, and this should be taken as an example by all. It's not just the passion he feels for karate, and it goes beyond fine techniques. Both physically and mentally, he can do a lot for us, developing new ways and educating others. He has the ability to see the future in modern martial arts, and we know he'll be able to come up with new developments that will further its recognition. He's shown us and those under him that even when you're in your 40s or 50s, it is possible to keep on practicing karate and never lose your skills.
そういうものを今度は後輩に、ね、今度は40になっても50になってもできる体でやっていけるんだと、技が落ちないんだと、いうようなものをやっぱり彼自身が。
He himself has taken the initiative in showing us this, and for that we are grateful. Karate, as perfected by Masahiko Tanaka, goes beyond the barriers usually accompanied by age. Even at an advanced age, he's certain to achieve victories. He's a man proud to be a karateka, and one confident enough to be victorious over other champions if he should enter future tournaments. Lastly, let's watch him take on 4 times the difficulty as he challenges 4 young opponents at once. The great master Masatoshi Nakayama points out the highlights of this match. First, the waza's total kick and thrust technique was determined from the start by the position the hips were in when the starting stance was taken. Keeping the body level at all times, the position of the hips when thrusting forward makes it possible to apply kicks and blows freely, easily executed whether to the front or rear. Furthermore, the supporting leg is firmly positioned on the floor. It's a rather impossible position to assume when considered from a psychological viewpoint. Second, the combination of blows and kicks are magnificent. Third, the center of gravity is kept low and stable. In particular, during Mai Kizami Geri, while lowering the hips, he raises the knee up high and close. Fourth, the movement of the feet and the shifting of the hips are beautiful. Fifth, we must watch closely the way he depreciates his opponent's waza. The art with which he depreciates the mai of the attacks of his opponent is something worthy of anyone called an expert. Last, I'd like to draw attention to the position of his body the instant his waza is finished. The moment it's attained, his body flies from that position. Most important is the way he moves to avoid his opponent's attack, a technique which allows him, in a dead serious match and in particular in international competition, to go on to win without injury. Exposing one's body to unnecessary danger is one of the gravest points in a match. Right here, one can see the severity required to gain a certain victory. Karate-do is lifetime Budo through training based on 3 principles: basic form, kata, and kumite, by which obstacles, both tangible and intangible, are overcome, with the ultimate goal being discipline of the mind and body. Contests are but one of the steps toward the ultimate goal of Karate-do as lifetime Budo. Contests should never become one's main purpose. Kata, separate from kumite, is but an empty frame. One cannot hope for the active, brilliant movements characteristic of Karate-do from kumite without kata. And kime, the essence of waza, cannot possibly be achieved. One must follow the spirit of Karate-do with certainty and sureness, and seek the path toward the unification of technique and spirit.
With kicking techniques, it's possible to execute decisive techniques even when at a large distance from your opponent. Moreover, since the progression of the technique is from down to up, you can take advantage of the opponent's blind spot to attack him. On the other hand, since you are standing on one leg when kicking, you tend to lose your balance and are slow to react to his attack, which creates openings. Kicking techniques require practice so that you are able to move as quickly as possible from beginning to end. Front kick. It's important in Maegeri that you position your hips as far forward as possible. From the proper posture leaning forward, you bend your knee quickly. When bending your kicking knee, do so as if you were executing hizageri, knee kicking, obliquely forward. Here, your supporting leg should be bent. You stretch the supporting leg forward as you bend your knee, and using the power generated, you thrust your hips forward. Your upper body should not lean backward over the ankle of your supporting leg. Notice that at the instant you begin to move, your supporting leg is bent slightly forward. In this manner, you are able to fully use the stretching power of the leg. When kicking, you develop power in your lower abdomen, and then, with the knee joint as your fulcrum, you move as if kicking off the lower part of your leg. Let's look here at the decisive point of a kick where the leg is bent. You execute the kick, producing instantaneous impact without changing the position of your knee. Lowering your knee causes unnecessary motion, which will delay your attack. Now let's look at the change of line of Maegeri. Here you avoid your opponent's Geidan Uke, lower block, and execute a kick and step forward without your leg returning, as in Keikomi. If you don't bend your knee enough, it's likely to be caught by your opponent. Thus, it's important to bend your knee fully. In Kumite, don't kick to a predetermined point as you would in practice, but try to improve your technique so that you become able to find an opening in your opponent's defense. Kick freely based on an instantaneous judgment of the situation. Front kick with front leg. The utility of this technique is that you can reach your objective more quickly due to the nearness of your kicking leg, front leg, to your opponent. Moreover, since your initial movement is small, your kicking leg is positioned in the blind spot of your opponent, and he will have difficulty blocking you. Close the distance between your front and back legs as much as possible, and lower your hips, which should be facing forward. Be sure that you extend your back leg and thrust your hips forward fully. When kicking, it's important that your front arm be placed toward the upper body of your opponent. Position your supporting leg firmly and shift your center of gravity forward. The last part of the kick is executed in the same manner as in Maigiri. Now, let's look at the method of practicing Kizami Maigiri. First, just the kick. Next, you add Jodanzuki, upper punching, to the kick. When you are able to execute this movement smoothly, you will be able to kick and punch simultaneously. Practice repeatedly, making sure you expand and contract your body, extend your back leg, and thrust your hips forward while paying attention to your hand position. Next, you practice with a partner. Study these points while keeping in mind what we have learned so far. Switch over front kick with front leg. By switching your front leg to the rear, you are simultaneously able to avoid the attack of your opponent and execute Maigiri. This technique is effective when you draw out his attack by closing the distance in order to make him commit himself fully. Here, you use Maigiri as Kizami-geri when your attacker is close. The instant your opponent moves, you withdraw your front leg while your back leg comes forward. The instant you switch legs, you have completed preparations to attack. After executing the technique, it's important to immediately move away from your opponent and remain in an alert state, zanshin. Roundhouse kick. Mawashi geri is a variation of mai geri and is a comparatively new technique. One of the advantages of this kick is that you can attack your opponent from the side by surprise and can change the distance with your hips. Effective use of this technique will generate great power due to the rotational force of the hips and the spring of the knee and hip joints. In actual kumite practice, you bend your knee as if to strike your opponent with the top of your knee. This protects you from being attacked by your opponent. You extend your back leg and thrust your hips forward in the same manner as for mai geri. You should plant the bottom of your pivot foot as though it were stuck to the floor and never raise it. Shift your center of gravity forward off of your pivoting leg. Don't forget to bend your pivot leg and be sure not to open your body too much. Now let's take a look at the decisive point of the kick from a bent knee position. You use the spring of the knee without changing its position. If you lower your knee, this will cause unnecessary motion and your attack will be delayed. Execute 3 consecutive movements, that is, a front kick, roundhouse kick, and rear roundhouse kick. The purpose of this practice is to learn to allocate power properly in order to make a smooth transition from one technique to another, and also to train the pivoting foot to develop a sense of balance. Roundhouse kick with front kick. Taking a gyaku gamae, opposite stance, you draw out your opponent's attack and then, switching your legs, you execute a counterattack, being sure to be far enough away so that he can't attack. This Joda Mawashi Geri is effective when the distance is slightly larger than for Kizami Mai Geri, front kick with the front leg. Notice that you draw your front leg back an additional foot's length more than for Kizami Mai Geri. The basic points to keep in mind are the same as for Kirikai no Kizami Mai Geri. The most important point is that when you switch your legs, you must be sure to immediately shift your center of gravity to your pivoting foot. When switching legs, be careful not to lean backwards or move your center of gravity over your heel. Note well the differences in leg movements as the distance changes. This is true not only for this technique, but for techniques in general, and we hope that this videotape will teach you to prepare yourself for a counterattack immediately after kicking, and to assume an attacking stance. Upper roundhouse kick from front kick feint. In this technique, you feign a Maigeri attack to your opponent to draw him into a Geidan Barai, lower block position. You then execute a roundhouse kick to his upper body when the opening appears. There are two ways of feinting. For the first, you execute a small maigeri, and for the second, you draw out your opponent by executing hizageri, knee kick. The important point is that you must completely draw out your opponent with your feint. When you change your technique from a front kick to a roundhouse kick, it's important to execute the kick naturally, without pulling or lowering your knee. slipping in short roundhouse kick. In this technique, you avoid your opponent's attack by sliding in off the line of attack the instant he steps forward. You execute mawashi geri to his midsection, chudan. You adjust the distance by stepping with your supporting leg. The instant you slide into the side of your opponent with your front leg as your support, you execute a kick. Enter with your whole body as if to crash into him. If you allow your hips to rise, this technique will be ineffective. If the distance is too close, this will also render the technique ineffective. After kicking, you should be behind his back in an alert stance. Inside roundhouse kick, instep. For this technique, you execute an unexpected attack from inside your opponent's stance. Now let's look at a situation where you are in close to your opponent. You execute a kick using your instep. If you lean too far backward, you will be pushed off balance by your opponent. Therefore, you should shift your center of gravity forward and execute a kick to the upper, middle, or lower part of your opponent's body, depending on the case. Next, let's see how this technique is used in each situation. One technique is Geidan Mawashi Geri, lower roundhouse kick, followed by Jodan Kekomi, upper through kick, a two-stage Nidan technique. Also, although not shown here, there is Geidan Uramawashi Geri, lower inside roundhouse kick, followed by the Jodan Ski upper punch attack, which is very effective in Kumite. Upper inside roundhouse kick, sole. Next, Let's study the case where the sole is used. While avoiding your opponent's attack, you execute a kick to the back of his head or back while looking over your shoulder. You turn your hips completely from the inside and execute a kick using the full power of the attacking leg. You then pull your kicking leg back with the feeling you are hitting your sole against the inside of your thigh. Rear kick. This is an attacking technique executed with your back to your opponent. With your hips serving as your center, kick with a spin using the twisting power of the hips. Here you use your heel. Make sure that the toes of your kicking leg are pointing downward toward the floor. You bend your supporting leg slightly as in Zenkutsu Dachi, but the bend is less extreme than in Maigiri. The instant you turn your back, you look over your shoulder to see the object of your attack. Here at the moment of kicking, you visually confirm your target. Your kick extends straight from the bent position as if you were rubbing your other knee. When attacking the middle part of your opponent's body, make every effort to keep your upper body parallel to the floor. Notice the change in the degree of the lean of your upper body as you shift the attack from the lower to the upper part of his body. Next, let's look at how the leg movement differs in an actual fighting situation depending on the distance. The important point in the rear kick is to choose an appropriate ma'ai, or distance. You should repeatedly practice to acquire a sense of distance and timing. Here is a look at the rear kick while avoiding the kizamizuki, jab. Try to imitate the leg movements presented here. This is the rear kick while avoiding the gyakuzuki, reverse punch. While driving your opponent back with uraken, punch with the back of the hand, you execute a rear kick. Here is a series of comparisons of leg movements for different distances. Study them over and over again. Freestyle Kumite. What should your mind be focused on while engaged in a match with an opponent? Here are some key points for competition presented by Masahiko Tanaka himself. Here the distance is slightly closer than in a normal match. By intentionally letting him execute techniques, you accustom yourself to his attacks and wait for the moment to launch a decisive technique of your own. You close the distance while pressuring him, and when he comes to attack you, draw back. By repeating this strategy, you learn what technique your opponent is trying to execute from what distance. You also learn to understand his timing. If you keep drawing back without pressuring him in order to preserve a safe distance, on the contrary, this will make it easier for him to attack you. When you withdraw, instead of moving back a little, you should draw back far enough so that he can't reach you. Don't forget to remain alert at that time. When you expose your midsection intentionally to draw him out, he will come to attack you. Here you execute a counterpunch while parrying his attack. Continue to apply pressure until he is forced to change his stance. The moment he switches his stance, you execute your technique with full power. Here you are shaking your wrist. The purpose of this is to establish a rhythm from the line of your hand through your shoulder to your chest, rather than through the center of your body. In this case, you pick up your opponent's rhythm by using your relaxed fingertips. When adopting the proper distance, just before executing a technique, you close the distance with your back leg while leaving your front leg as it is. Masahiko Tanaka accomplished the feat of winning the All Japan Karate Association Championship and the IAKF World Karate Championship in succession. His work on behalf of karate has been outstanding. The techniques of this 46-year-old master never decline. It's not the speed and power of his technique alone which are responsible for his strength. It's due to his indomitable fighting spirit, his superb ability to sense the appropriate moment to attack, and his skill in adopting the correct distance. Please study these points, which are explained in the description of free kumite. Unlike the legs, the hands can move in all directions, up and down, left and right, forward and backward. You can open or close your hand and use the back and palm of your hand. It's possible with the tips of the fingers of your hands to adjust the fighting rhythm, draw out an attack by your opponent, and to receive or parry his attack. However, if you open your elbow too much or are too tense, your punch won't follow the correct line and your power will be scattered. Thus, it's important to pay attention to these points. This is equally true for any situation where you must adjust the amount of power according to the timing of the situation. Upper body movement, and particularly hip movement, are essential in order to increase the effectiveness of hand movements. Straight punch. In the basics of oizuki, you practice paying particular attention to the angle of the bend of your forward knee, the tensing of your rear leg, and the forward advance of your hips, while maintaining them at a fixed level. Since there is a tendency to extend your shoulder too far, position your hips squarely forward and keep your upper body straight. Make it a point to coordinate the movements of the legs, hips, and punching hand. When punching from a free stance position, try to strike from the position of your hand in the stance. Decisive punch. Here, let's look at the differences in punching from different distances. If you are too close to execute gyakuzuki, execute a decisive punch with tateken, fist with thumb upward, without too much of an elbow bend. As the distance becomes closer, bend your elbow more and execute sokozuki, punch with fingers upward. If the distance is still closer, there is the tendency to force a punch, which results in your upper body leaning backwards or your shoulder being pulled back. This is not effective. Be sure to use your hips fully, especially when executing a strong punch from a close distance. Make sure that no opening exists between your punching hand and your side. Also, there's a tendency to put too much power into your shoulder in small techniques. Be careful to avoid this. If you pull your arm back from the stance position before punching, this will delay your attack. Unlike the case of basics, in actual kumite, it's important that you execute punches without changing the position of your fist. If you withdraw your hand before punching, your attack will be delayed by the time required to draw back your hand. Learn to allocate your power in a rational manner in levels from 0 to 10 in order to punch effectively without changing the position of your fist. Make an effort to use the power produced by the rapid shifting of your weight as you step into punch. Variations of oizuki. Next, let's look at some variations of oizuki. There are 3 variations of oizuki. In basic punches, you strike when your foot comes into contact with the floor. In kumite, in many cases, you speed up or slow down the timing of your punch according to the situation, and this is more effective. Here, you punch ahead of your leg. In this case, you move your leg first to alter your timing and then execute a punch. Now let's do these at actual speed. Here you punch first. In order to speed up the timing of your punch, move your body together with your fist and then thrust it out. With a feint, you alter your timing and then punch as your leg touches the floor. Reverse punch. The points to keep in mind for gyakuzuki are the same as for oizuki. This punch can be extremely powerful if the rotational power of the hips is effectively used. Master the basics well in order to understand the relationship between the rotation of the hips and stretching of your rear leg. Ankle flexibility is very important. Position the toe of your rear leg toward the direction of the attack as much as possible. The important point here is not to raise the heel of your rear foot. execute gyakuzuki from the changed stance. Notice the difference in the attacking distance. Gyakuzuki from zenkutsudachi, standing with the front leg bent. Next, gyakuzuki from kokutsudachi, standing with rear leg bent. Next, you close the distance between your legs and using the power generated by bending your rear leg, execute gyakuzuki. First, place your weight on your rear foot and shift your weight as you punch. Imura Sensei will now demonstrate gyakuzuki while advancing. Gyakuzuki while advancing with tsugi-ashi, shuffling feet. You pursue your opponent with gyakuzuki, and then execute another gyakuzuki. When executing gyakuzuki to the upper level, jodan, do so as if to receive the opponent's upper punch, jodanzuki, like a cross counterpunch. Since this technique is often used in kumite, try to learn it. Compare the differences in distances. Let's observe this technique in actual movement. This is gyakuzuki with a feint. If you don't feint well, you will end up giving your opponent a sufficient mai to execute a counterattack as can be seen here. If you enter with no protection, you will be attacked at the initial contact. You enter with yosei ashi, trailing foot, while controlling your opponent's punch with your front hand. Notice that you adjust the distance with your rear leg. Jab. This is the most frequently used strike in kumite. When drawing your rear leg forward to pursue your opponent, do so as if you were shifting your upper body to the position of your front hand. It's important to aim squarely at your target with the top of the fist of your front hand. By fully twisting your arm at the decisive instant, you can increase the power of a technique executed from a short range. When practicing, aim to use this technique in a large motion with kizamizuki and gyakuzuki, and master the attacking distance through the expansion and contraction of your body and the bend of your rear leg. When practicing Kizami Gyakuzuki, be sure that your Kizami Zuki is not too short. When executing a Kizami Zuki attack, you will commonly be attacked at the initial contact. You must take action to control his hand. Don't just execute a strike, but think of the most effective angle to use. You strike into your opponent's fist. If you do this, your opponent will try to avoid your fist instinctively, and you can execute an effective attack by taking advantage of this opening. You execute a strike as though controlling his elbow from the outside of his fist. You execute a strike from the inside of his fist as though throwing up your elbow. Keep in mind what you have learned thus far. Distract your opponent's attention by touching his front hand with your left and then execute an attack while he is off guard. In this technique, you execute an attack by closing the maai and moving your body forward without shifting the position of your fist. As shown here, you should be able to execute an attack by stepping in freely for a small or large maai. Also, the reason for going to the outside of your opponent is to prevent him from counterattacking and to keep yourself in a favorable position for attacking. Let's look at this in an actual kumite situation. You won't be able to execute consecutive techniques unless you always leave a sufficient margin in your first technique as shown here. Backhand from pulling slap. If you slap the opponent's front hand, he will try to withdraw his hand immediately. You take advantage of this opening in his defenses to execute an attack with uraken. Remain in an alert position after turning to the outside. Change for Kizami-zuki to Ura-ken. This technique is effective when there is a large distance and you wonder whether you can reach your opponent with Kizami-zuki. When striking, make your motion small and use the snapping power of your elbow and wrist. Since the distance is greater, be sure not to lean forward. Dropping straight strike. When far away from your opponent, enter with a strong oizuki, and then execute an attack by crouching down under your opponent's arm, just as he tries to punch at the initial contact. You create an apparent opening in your upper body, thus drawing out an attack by your opponent. Make your body small by lowering your head as much as possible in order to protect your face. Make sure you don't lean over. Round punch. You execute an attack to your opponent's blind spot from the side while avoiding his attacking line. The part of the body used here is the same as for Ura-ken. Raise your elbow using it as your pivot point and rotate your arm to strike. Let's look at the actual movement. Snap the opponent's front hand with your ura-ken, and then immediately execute Mawashizuki. This is a technique which takes your opponent by surprise. Hook punch. In Mawashizuki, you rotate only your arm and strike from the side, but in Kagizuki, you strike forward while your body moves to the side. In both techniques, you attack your opponent from an angle so as to surprise him. Note the difference between the Mawashizuki technique introduced earlier, where your fist moves in a swinging motion, while here the punch involves a complete extension. Bend your elbow 90 degrees when striking and enter with your body and punch at the same time. Notice that your fist is placed along the opponent's attacking line while your body is to the side. It's important to enter strongly, as if to knock your opponent off balance by crashing into him with your hips. Body pivot. Tai-sabaki refers to the movement of your body where you avoid your opponent's attack and attack him while going around to his side. Position your hips as far forward as possible to create a large distance in order to draw out your opponent. Make the distance between your feet slightly closer, and with your hips as the pivot point, make a turn with your whole body. If your leg moves first and your body after, your pivot will be delayed, and you will be attacked by your opponent. Now let's look at the actual movement. This is Jodanzuki after avoiding Maigiri. The Ura-ken attack after avoiding Maigiri. The Chudan attack after avoiding Maigiri. In all cases, it's important to move to the opponent's side, assuming an alert posture. You should move your body in an oblique direction so that you can immediately place yourself in a counter-attacking position. Unbalancing the opponent, sweeping with the front leg. Close the distance between your feet slightly and lower your hips with the center of gravity over your rear foot. You adjust the distance with your rear foot. Since your opponent will try to brace his legs to remain balanced, using this power, take one step forward and execute the unbalancing technique. Use the inside of the ankle of your front leg. Your center of gravity is over your rear foot. Be sure not to raise your hips too high or try to back out from your hips. When attacked with Maegeri, draw your leg back an extra foot length in order to adjust the distance. Unbalancing the opponent, sweeping. There are two ways of executing ashi badai against an opponent who comes to punch you from the outside and inside. When using this technique offensively, it's effective to use it in the same manner as for mawashi-geri. Ashi badai is used in two ways. For the first method, you unbalance your opponent, and for the second, you stop his movement momentarily by concentrating his attention on the lower body, geidan. You aim at the upper part of his ankle or calf. Your body pivot will change according to the distance from your opponent. If the opponent is close, the pivot point is the center of your body. If, on the other hand, he is far away, the front of your body becomes the pivot point and your body moves in a large arc. In the sweeping techniques of karate, unlike judo, you should execute a punch and kick consecutively immediately after breaking your opponent's balance. Blocks. In osae techniques, you enter the instant before your opponent, who is advancing forward to attack, and block his technique before he can execute it. When your opponent strikes, block his whole arm. Here you punch into him as though executing a lower strike. Here, you strike into him using your forearm. When blocking kicks, enter with your whole body as though striking his groin. Make a sharp oblique downward blocking movement, being careful not to move perpendicular to his shin. It's important to instantaneously judge his attack. The most essential factor is to enter powerfully as though crashing into your opponent and block the entire movement of his body. Keep in mind when blocking the opponent's technique that you do so either the instant before the advance of the opponent to execute a technique or after he finishes his technique. In this case, you are executing the osae immediately before his technique. Block with knee kick. The method of executing hizageri, knee kick, is the same as the bending of the knee and stretching of the rear leg for kizami-geri. Close the distance between your feet and use the stretching power of your rear leg. Never allow your hips to rise too high and keep the distance between the elbow of your front arm and knee as constant as possible. When blocking kicks, think of cutting his shin with your shin rather than trying to land your kick against his knee. It's important to block boldly. When moving into your opponent with hizageri, do so as if you were executing kizamizuki with the top of your knee. Also, notice that you don't change the position of your front leg when drawing up your rear leg. In this manner, you are using the distance to your exclusive advantage. Nowadays, many points are scored in kumite matches with tsuki, punching techniques. However, one of the characteristic features of Karate-do is that you can use any part of your body as a weapon, and you can execute free attacks based on mechanical movements of your whole body. Relying only on hand techniques because they are easy to control in order to win points will never lead to a well-rounded karate practice. The road to success is a long one. It's by combining hand and foot techniques such as kicks from punches and punches from kicks that the effectiveness of Karate-do techniques is apparent. Masahiko Tanaka accomplished the feat of winning the All Japan Karate Association Championship and the IAKF World Kumite Championship in succession. His work on behalf of karate has been outstanding. The techniques of this 46-year-old master never decline.